Guys, really, welcome to the 40-year Halloween anniversary panel.
Yeah!
Yes. Let's hear it for PJ, Nick Castle, Nancy Willis, Keys. Awesome. So, well, look at, there you guys are. So while I would love to talk to...
On the phone.
Yeah. So, you should have used the picture of Michael on the phone when he picked up the phone after. Yeah, that would have been great. Could have been like a Sprint commercial. So, since this is a Halloween panel, well, I would like to talk to PJ about Riff Randall and Nick about Skate Town USA and Nancy about the fog. We're gonna focus on Halloween because I think that's what you guys want to hear about. Awesome. So we're going to start with an easy question that I'm sure you've answered a million times, but these people want to hear it. How did you come about being in the film? We'll start with you, PJ.
Was called in, my agent got a call, and then, John Carpenter wanted to meet me, and it was an unusual situation because usually you go through casting first, but my meeting initially was just with John, and I read a scene with John, and he actually told me at the time, 20 minutes later, well, you got the part if you want it, and I went, yeah. So that was
Did you
really
say totally
cool.
or yeah?
I didn't, but
Okay.
then, he did say, you're the only girl that read the word totally the right way, and I said, well, how else would you do it? And he said, that's why I'm offering you. And then he asked me to stay and read with three prospective actors for the part of Bob, so I helped him choose John Michael Graham.
Awesome. Nick, how about you?
Well, I was a friend of John's from film school at University of Southern California, and when he was mounting this movie, it was very close to where I lived. And I came down to pre-production while they were looking at these locations and said, hey, John, I'm going to hang around. Just watch how you direct, because that's what I want to do when I grow up. So he said, okay, so if you're going to be here, then why don't you put on the mask and be the guy that kills everybody? I went, great. That's how I got it.
Awesome. Nancy?
Good job. Well, I like Nick was a friend of John's, and so he just sort of took the easy way out and said, would you like to be in this part? Actually, he cast me in Assault on Precinct 13.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yes. Great.
So, it was just easy. Well, Nancy will do this, right? So, so I did. So I too just sort of got a phone call saying, "Are you interested?" And of course I was, right? So that's how that happened.
Awesome. Nancy, I'll start with you. How was the first of all, how long was the shoot, and how was what was the chemistry like on set?
Well, the chemistry was great. It was really fun.
Okay.
Because it was this sort of casual,
An instant camaraderie.
yeah, it was really fun, and I think Deborah and John worked pretty hard to keep it all pretty low key, and a lot of people had worked before, and some of them goes back as far as Nick, they'd been to film school with John, right? So that was good. How long was the shoot? I think it was around a month.
Okay.
And 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was really fast,
Yeah.
and it was in the month of April when there were no pumpkins to be had.
Not to mention the palm trees in Illinois. But.
Unlike, New England, where you might expect to find a few pumpkins in good shape in April, right? The thaw is not that far along. Our pumpkins were rotting. They had to drive all the way to the north end of the valley, right? Or maybe even to the San Joaquin Valley to get the pumpkins, not to mention like fall leaves. So those were like big problems for the art department.
Right. Now, expectations weren't through the roof for this film, right? I mean, people weren't expecting a great deal. What was it like when it released and just started exploding out to the market? How was that?
I don't remember exploding, but I do remember being happy.
How would you describe
it? Turned
it?
out like a real movie, and I was blown away by the soundtrack. I thought, wow, because I hadn't even thought of that he was going to write and perform the music with you. Right? Weren't you in the band? Oh, you weren't in the band.
You were in the band, but
I was in the band, but John, was a one-man show there. Oh, well, with Alan Howarth.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but my recollection is, oh, good, I've got some more footage to show casting directors to get another part. And but I don't remember it being, initially it was sort of a lukewarm reception, and then it was really word of mouth, and then just people kept saying, oh, you got to see this movie, and it grew and grew, but and not to the extent that it is today. This is the best it's ever been. I think the 40th anniversary, it's amazing you guys have kept this movie alive.
yeah, you and the internet.
Well, this time in John's career, remember he'd done 2 films, Dark Star, which I love, and
Me too.
and Assault, which we just all applauded for, which was also a good film. But they weren't big hits. They were recognized in critical circles as something pretty interesting, especially Assault, I think. And so he's doing his 3rd movie. It's a horror film. So what do you expect out of that? I just hope, good, maybe John will get another job out of this. That's the expectation you have. Oh boy, he's doing a low budget thing. It's really clever. Look, they did it's a clever idea. They have a clever title. But you don't expect 40 years later, even 1 week later or 2 weeks later. By the way, the movie didn't do well right out of the gate. It wasn't a big hit right off the bat. It got horrible reviews. And evidently one of the major, where it really started to have a change, is that Roger Ebert saw it,
Chicago
Recognize
Sun-Times.
the talent of John.
and recognized the talent of John, recognized this as a kind of unusually good movie for this genre.
Right.
And that started really the reconsideration of it, and it took off.
As well as the fact that Deborah Hill was a woman and she was a producer. That was cutting edge back then. She was one of the first, as well as a co-writer. So that was a very important aspect of this film. She was in an area that had not been forged before.
Absolutely. Nick, one thing I always wondered, and I never really read it, why did John decide to use multiple actors for the Michael Myers character? Is it you? It was Tommy Lee Wallace had a couple scenes, Tony Moran. I think there might have even been somebody else at one point.
There was some practical reasons for Tommy Lee Wallace, for instance, did 2 scenes that I can recall. One was the really good one, the closet scene.
Yes.
Because he was a production designer. He, on a small crew, 3-person art department, had to score the door so that you can literally put your fist through it. You're not going to go through a real door. And this was a low-budget picture, so they had one door. So he said, I'm putting on the mask and I'm going to go put my fist through it because I know where to do it. So it was that kind of thing, was for practical reasons. The last time they take off the mask, John wanted to cast someone for a look, for what Michael actually looks like. So that one scene, Tony Moran is in. Other than that, there was maybe a couple other times just for convenience
the
sake.
stunt guy.
The stunt guy fell off the roof. Them down.
You didn't want to do that.
I didn't want to do that.
No, I don't blame you.
And there is the lore of Deborah Hill, the producer, actually putting on the mask in a long distance shot, and I assume that's because I wasn't around for whatever reason. And so, in that sense, there are some, but to the extent that I'm Michael Myers behind the mask for 95% of the movie.
Thank you. Excellent. You guys have brought up, the incredible staying power of this film. How does it feel to see, everywhere you go when you do these conventions, the reactions that you guys get from fans about Halloween? Like we said, nobody really knew it was going to be what it's become. How does it feel to you to see these fans' reaction? You've got all these people in here, but you've also got like 75 people in the hall watching this on Facebook Live right now that want to be in here, and everybody wants to see you guys and meet you guys on the strength of this film. How does that personally feel to you guys?
Well, obviously it feels great. It feels strange because who would have thought? And it's just marvelous because, you know, it was a small film. It was sort of a stepping stone for a lot of us. And now it's just turned out to be, you know, more than a stepping stone, but a bridge. It's just incredible. So we're very proud and happy that you guys have continued, and you obviously were younger when you saw it and your parents showed you, and now you're showing your kids, so it just has been like a snowball effect, and it just remains to be the sort of the keystone, the marker of what a good horror film can be without a lot of blood and gore, but a psychological thriller even beyond Hitchcock, and a very simple movie, but real characters, real emotions, and a very troubling lead character.
Very
Are
troubling.
you talking about me?
Yeah. Nancy, what about you? What about you?
Well, I mean, I agree with PJ. I think for me, having just met so many fans of the movie over the last few years now, it's just really made me really appreciate the film in a way that I think heretofore I had not appreciated, and really come to sort of revise my feeling about not only the film, but perhaps the entire genre. So I'm very grateful to all of you for that enlightenment.
That's a good point. I think your enthusiasm is very infectious for us. You know, it gives us as much joy as I think this kind of movie brings to you. Your enjoyment of it brings that much joy to us. So it's fun. I didn't expect this too. I think I'm the latest to the band here in terms of coming to these kinds of conventions, and I didn't know what to expect, and you know, it's just all a lot of fun, and we all appreciate your interest in this and your love for it. The one thing that I was talking to Nancy about parenthetically is the conjuncture now between in the Halloween world with a new movie coming out. Not to make this about that.
No, that's fine.
But,
people are going to ask you about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
No, but you can see. I mean, fans of the original, I think, have already heard enough about what the new direction this is going in, but also the love of the original one that it is based on. And they're looking forward to this, and it kind of makes everything feel new again. And so we're hoping, as a person that's helped on that new film, we're hoping that fun will be part of your new experience with this thing.
Awesome. I'm going to open this up to these guys because they have a lot more better questions than I do. Nancy, I just want to give you a heads up. If you're smoking weed in the car and your dad's a cop, don't stop. Just
It's legal now.
well, actually, so yeah, there you go.
I consider that scene to like have helped somehow.
Help legalize. Great job.
But if your dad is a cop, you still don't.
Still probably shouldn't stop. I still every time I watch it, I'm still like, just keep driving. You don't have to stop. Just keep going. Keep going. Hi, Dad. No, drive. All right, who's got? I've just red hat.
Hold on, we got a microphone.
Oh, you got a. We have a crowd mic.
Yeah. Hands down.
We have a crowd mic.
Down.
Then you know what? I'm gonna give PJ my mic.
Hello. I don't want to take a bunch of time out of Halloween questions, but I was showing my children Major Pain the other day, and I saw for the first time after many, many times of watching that it was directed by Nick Castle, and I thought that was great. So just a quick second, could you say anything about the movie Major Pain? We loved it. It's a great family movie.
Well, thank you very much. This was a movie, in case some of you didn't see or didn't know about it, back in 1995. It's a comedy starring Damon Wayans and a bunch of kids that he...
Great movie.
Yeah, thank you. that he bullies throughout the whole movie. It's pretty hilarious, and I don't know what to say. It's Damon is a superior comic talent, and he came up with this very funny character that made me want to do the movie. It was only because of his character that I thought that this was something worthwhile, and it does stand the test of time. There's a lot of fans of this, and I appreciate when folks, bring up some of my other movies.
Thank you. I got one.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be helpful, Ken.
Who's talking?
Trying to be helpful. My fault.
Where are we going?
I'm over here.
Oh, there you go.
There it is.
I'd like to ask you, please, about working with the children who were in this film. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I don't know the actors' names, but Lindsay, Tommy, and then there's a boy who plays Michael in the beginning. And I know, Nancy, you worked with the Lindsay character. Obviously, maybe some of the actors didn't as much as you did, but do you have any thoughts about how they were on the set? They were, for modern horror films, maybe some of the first children. I know we had movies like Children of the Damned, and there were other children in maybe horror films before that. But in terms of modern horror, maybe they were some of the first children that were in modern horror films, and how did their families feel about them being in the film? How were they on the set? Just wondering.
Well, in my experience, they were fairly isolated because they were children. They had to go to school. And, they had their handlers around. And my only real interaction with them that I recall was actually on the set when we would rehearse and then, we would do the scene, and they all seemed very capable. And I, not being much more than a kid myself, was just kind of took them for granted, I think. I can't really speak to your question. I think, I know that when we made Assault on Precinct 13, and is it Kim Richards who was in that film? She played the child, the young girl who played the child. That was a very disturbing thing for me, because that was some serious violence, and that she had to sort of participate in, and I was disturbed by that. But I don't think I made a lot of waves about it. I just remember having that awareness that this might not be appropriate for this little kid. She might have some trauma as a result of it, just as an actress having to go through that.
And like the kid in Devil's Rejects, I felt bad for him because,
Yes.
not to change it from Halloween, but speaking
Yeah.
about kids, we were in the store and I kept saying over and over, your mom told you what the scene's about, right? You know that he's going to say some very bad words and he's going to scream in your face. And he goes, I know. But I think those were real tears when he finally did get the blast. We're going to kill your
They
own
look like it. If they weren't, he was a very gifted actor for his age. He looked scared.
One thing, though, just to note about this is that, this was a low-budget film. It was done professionally in that regard. I mean, this was taken care in terms of all the rules and regulations of the Screen Actors Guild in terms of the children's time on set, etc., etc. This was not a situation where there was even the hint of any kind of abuse of time or energy like you have. It's not as if it hasn't happened, of course.
Sure it has.
We all know. Maybe we don't all know, but the Twilight Zone example is one where big budget movies can get out of control with the right people. But you had great people steering the ship here. The one that I think that comes to mind, of course, is Deborah Hill.
Awesome.
Plus, when kids work, they spend less time on set than they do in the trailer in being tutored. They have more school time they actually have to go through with the tutor and do that, and then I guess they have an acting coach that helps them with the scenes, and by the time they walk on the set, they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and especially with this movie being time constrained and low budget, you have 1 or 2 or possibly 3 takes, so they were very ready. And these are kids that wanted to be actors, they're not like forced into it, and I think Brian Andrews his mother was a casting agent and he wanted to be an actor. So these kids are very, excited about it, but trust me, the time that you see on film is about as much time as they were on the set, because it's a rule and that's the way it works. You can't have a child work over 20 minutes, then he's got to take a rest, then he's got to go back to school, and then, I don't know how much time they're allowed, but it's very, very strict.
Someone asked me who's got the microphone.
Did you point out who you want to talk, Larry?
Well, now you're giving it to me?
No, it's true.
Now you're giving it to me right there.
Go ahead, Leanne. We have a microphone, Larry, out here. All you gotta do is point to the person you want to talk. Oh, okay.
Now, question. Seeing her in the original Halloween, how do you feel remakes have done justice to the originals? Yeah. How do you feel the remakes have done any justice to the to the originals? The Rob Zombie movies.
I have not seen the Rob Zombie movie, so unfortunately I can't speak.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I saw the first one, and because I had worked in The Devil's Rejects, I felt obligated to see it. Everybody told me don't watch the second one, so I didn't. But you know what? I obviously the first one is the best, and it's very hard to remake and reimagine a movie like ours. And I guess in my mind, he just put too much into it, and the simplicity of John Carpenter, Deborah Hill's vision is the one that plays best. But people like it, and they like Rob Zombie. So it was a different era, a different time. And hey, let's see what I can do with it. Everybody knows him as an artist, and it's nice that he gave it a go. So.
Go ahead, Leanne. Leanne, front row, Leanne. Leanne, front.
Black hat. You're not that far away.
What's going on?
Oh, but you're on
There's a guy with a microphone.
Go ahead.
Now, when you watched the movie, were you scared?
When I saw the movie, when I saw the rough cut, I was not scared, and I actually thought, oh, wow, well, okay, maybe I'll get another job out of this movie, but probably not. And then I went to the opening when the cast and crew screening, and I was terrified. I thought it was fabulous because they'd added all the music and the sound effects, and suddenly it was like a really live thing that was really happening, and it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you all very much for your role in the film. And Nick, I wanted to personally thank you for decades of recurring nightmares. Appreciate that. So I know Larry kind of asked what your experience was with the fans over the years, but here we are on the 40th anniversary. I just turned 40 this year, and this movie is iconic. It is, to me, the definitive horror film. So I'm wondering what each of your experience has been, aside from your other respective bodies of work, what your experience has been with Halloween, what it means to you 40 years later. Because it means like the world to so much of us, but you're on the other side of it. And again, knowing you've done so much other work, what is this one film, what does it mean to you?
Well, it's a mixed bag for me because, I'm sure on my gravestone it'll say, the killer from Halloween, Michael Myers. And forget the other 12 movies that I either wrote or directed. So that's the complication of this, because because this was in a sense such a lark for me to do this. As you can tell, it was thrown at me just out of the blue. I would like to make it much more dramatic for everybody. On the other side of it, it's like it could have been any of you there. If you had just gone to school with John Carpenter, you might have been the same. But as far as as I get into these horror conventions, the weight of the importance of the movie starts to become more and more apparent to me. More and more I meet you guys, the more I understand it as something that's loved by people, and it does make me, as you were saying, reassess, the importance in my life about it, and of course, it's always going to be a part of it now. And so I've taken that into account. Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I've had the pleasure to meet so many people that otherwise I would not have met, and just spend, it's a party when we get to come to these things, and it gets me out of my rut, which is always good, and I do appreciate the film on levels that I just probably never would have, just because of the directions that my life went in, right? But to the point where, okay, I feel like I have a certain responsibility, right? Think about that, But it is a privilege in a way, and also sort of a responsibility to, like, okay, if that's the way everybody feels about it, well, okay, who am I to not just sort of be here for them, right? In a way
agree.
that's meaningful to you guys.
What she said.
One other third row on the other. Before you start, one other thing I think that you might be interested in, and maybe you already know this. I went to London this last summer at a Comic-Con, London Comic-Con, and I didn't until then understand the global magnitude of this movie. I mean, I met sitting at my table, and of course, in Europe it's pretty close for everybody to get, but I met people from France, Germany, Holland, Croatia, Italy, Spain, all of the Scandinavian countries. A guy came from Japan. The American culture in general really travels. And this movie, of course, is as you know, it's not just an American phenomenon; it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Absolutely, 100%.
Sorry. This is a question for Nick and PJ. Were you scared, Nick? Were you scared when you were choking PJ with the phone cord?
More scared than I was.
That's true. I think I've heard PJ remind me of the fact that I was, trying not to kill her, actually, and trying to do this, and she was going, "Come on, Nick, let's get into this."
Yes, no, he was tickling my neck with the cord, and you can't pretend to die when you're going. Very difficult. And he's like, "I don't want to hurt you." I said, "Well, you got to do a little harder. You got. It's okay. I can act the rest, but you got to give me something." And then to make up for that, because I felt that he wasn't really choking me, I felt that I had to gag until I was out of frame and until John yelled cut, and I just kept going because at least I could do because he wasn't choking me hard enough to die that quickly, so I had to have a slow death.
White t-shirt, man.
How is it playing Michael Myers?
How is it playing Michael Myers? Well, that's a general question.
Did you read the script?
Oh yeah, I read the script. It wasn't as I was trying to indicate before. This was because you're under a mask. You don't need any training to do that. By the way, the fact is you are puppeteered by the director. At least I was in this sense, and John would just tell me what to do. So I didn't need to know a thing. I just needed to know where I start and where I finish in the terms of the particular shot. So no great depth of understanding of the character needed to be done, and that's where it landed.
Excellent. Let's go right here.
My question is for Nick. Nick, what was your feeling when they announced that the movie franchise was going to continue after 40 years as a direct continuation of the first one, and they wanted your involvement?
Oh yeah, I got a call from the person that books me and is my agent for these kind of horror things, and he said that, Nick, you're okay. I'm going to give you a strange request. And I said, what? And he said, well, I just got a call from the studio that's doing the new Halloween, and they were asking me for the other guys that have been in the Halloween. And my friend and agent Sean Clark said, well, why wouldn't you be asking Nick Castle? He's the guy that did it 40 years ago. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And they said, well, would he do it? And he said, well, let me ask him. That's how it came to me.
Oh, wow. Wow. Good for Sean. Good job. Guys, we got one more question, and I'm going to go with this young gentleman right here. Yep.
Hey, this is my first convention.
Hey, well, welcome. Welcome to the life, my friend.
I watched the Halloween movie last night to recap or whatnot, and I just love the film so much. I've watched it so many times. And with the new Halloween movie, are we going to be expecting anything new or different than the other ones?
I guess I should answer that one.
Well, he doesn't want to hear from me.
Well, yeah, it's certainly, as I'm sure all of you know, it's the conceit of the film is that it's literally 40 years later. Michael in this incarnation and in the past, they've rethought it through, and he's caught at the end of #1. And he's put back into the insane asylum. And it's now 40 years later, and he escapes again. Now, the process that the filmmakers are using, and the way that they're are going about the making of this new film, is really by honoring the first one. They love the first one. Not that they didn't like the other ones, you know, but they just thought, we want to make a movie that is like the continuation of that first one. So I think you're going to love it. You know, in terms of the style, it's very similar. In terms of the kind of neighborhood-centric kind of place that it takes place in. And then there... What? The music, the same guy doing the music. Remember, he also executive produced the movie, so he had a lot to say about keeping his eye on this thing. So I just think you're going to be happy with this thing. You know, it's impossible to make a movie as good as the first one, I think. It really was one of a kind, a lightning in a bottle. But this will, I think you'll love it, especially the fans, because they really respect you out there and what you brought to this to make it such a big hit. You know, and they are fans, by the way. Danny McBride, this crazy comedian, and David Gordon Green, they're giant fans of Halloween and of John.
Excellent. Before we wrap, any last words, Nancy, for the crowd?
Just thank you all very much. And rock on.
Nick, any last words?
Yes, listen, again, I think we've made ourselves clear. We love you all. And by the way, I just want to say something. Right after this, I'm running to a car to get to the airport. So don't think I'm running away from you. I'll be running back to you, hopefully, in the next conventions. But that's where I'm going.
PJ? You got it.
Absolutely, thank you. We were very humbled and grateful for all of you, and I truly mean it. You've been, like Nancy said, you just remind us almost and make us feel young again. And we remember being in that movie over and over every time you come and tell us, oh, I just loved your character, I loved that movie. And there's just a little glow in our hearts, and it just, it really helps keeping you young and making you feel special. So thank you for that feeling that you're giving us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.